Roman military technology is often taught as a story of discipline, formations, and iron will. But that explanation hides something far more unsettling, because the real reason Rome's enemies so often collapsed in panic wasn't bravery or numbers, but a subtle piece of ancient weapons engineering that turned the laws of physics into a psychological weapon. And once you understand how a simple lead weight transformed an ordinary javelin into a battlefield system killer, you begin to see Roman conquest not as brute force, but as the earliest example of scientific warfare applied at scale. For centuries, historians focused on legions marching in step and commanders shouting orders, yet buried beneath that spectacle was an engineered projectile designed to dismantle enemy confidence before swords ever clashed. And today, weapons archaeology and experimental reconstructions are revealing just how deliberate and terrifying that design truly was. You've probably been told that Roman soldiers dominated because they were disciplined and well-trained, but discipline alone doesn't explain why entire enemy formations froze, broke, or fled moments before contact, because courage fails when the tools you trust suddenly betray you, and the pilum was designed precisely to trigger that moment of catastrophic doubt. This wasn't just a thrown spear, and it certainly wasn't improvised. The pilum javelin design represents one of the most advanced examples of historical warfare technology, combining ancient metallurgy, lead-weight physics, and battlefield psychology into a single object optimized for Roman army tactics. Its purpose wasn't primarily to kill, which is the part that most modern depictions get wrong, but to dismantle shield wall tactics so completely that enemy soldiers entered close combat already defeated in their minds. The secret sat near the tip, where a carefully placed lead weight shifted the center of gravity forward, transforming the pilum into a projectile that behaved unlike any other weapon of its time, because when released, it didn't arc gently or glance off defenses, but accelerated into shields with a downward punch that amplified pilum penetration power far beyond what its size suggested. This is where ancient warfare science becomes impossible to ignore, because the Romans weren't guessing, they were exploiting javelin physics with precision that rivals early modern ballistics theory. The added mass increased momentum, stabilized flight, and ensured that on impact the soft iron shank bent sideways, locking the weapon into the shield and instantly converting that shield from a source of protection into a crippling liability. Imagine the moment from the enemy's perspective, because ancient battle analysis shows that perception matters as much as casualties. A Gallic or Germanic warrior charges with confidence, shield raised, trusting centuries of tradition that say wood and leather will stop thrown weapons, and then, without warning, a 7-foot shaft punches through with such force that the iron twists under its own weight, yanking the shield downward, pulling the warrior off balance, blocking vision, and forcing an impossible choice between dropping protection or stumbling forward helplessly. That single second of hesitation is all Roman legion dominance required, because Roman military strategy was built around exploiting exactly that window, when formations fracture and individuals panic. What makes this unsettling is that the Romans didn't invent javelins at all, because throwing spears had existed for thousands of years across cultures. But Rome transformed a common weapon into an engineered solution through ancient military innovation refined over generations. Archaeological finds from battlefield archaeology sites across Europe reveal variations in weight placement, shank length, and tip hardness, suggesting systematic ancient weapons testing long before laboratories existed. This was military innovation history, unfolding through repetition, observation, and ruthless optimization, and it challenges the comforting myth that ancient warfare was chaotic and unsophisticated. Experimental archaeologists recreating pila using historically accurate materials have demonstrated that a weighted pilum could penetrate thick oak planks at distances consistent with Roman engagement ranges, proving that lead-weight physics turned muscle-powered throws into devastating delivery systems. When you calculate the energy transfer involved, the results rival later crossbow impacts, which reframes our understanding of ancient arms race dynamics entirely. This wasn't luck. It was applied physics, executed by soldiers trained to throw in synchronized volleys, amplifying effect through coordination rather than raw strength. The Roman army didn't rely on a single throw either, because Roman tactical superiority depended on layered disruption. Each legionary carried 2 pila, typically one heavier and one lighter, and Roman army tactics dictated that the heavy pila flew first to destroy shields, followed immediately by lighter versions aimed at exposed bodies or second ranks, creating cascading failure within enemy formations. By the time swords were drawn, shield walls had collapsed, spacing was broken, and morale was already shattered, demonstrating that Roman conquest methods prioritized system disruption over attrition. Ancient sources describe warriors struggling to wrench pilum free, only to discover that the soft iron shank had bent intentionally, and even if the wooden shaft snapped, the embedded metal remained, weighing the shield down and making it useless. This design choice reveals Roman engineering secrets rooted in human behavior, because Romans understood that soldiers would instinctively try to fix their equipment under stress, and every second spent wrestling with a broken shield was a second not spent fighting back. This is psychological warfare embedded directly into hardware, and it's why Roman military technology deserves to be analyzed as a scientific discipline rather than a historical curiosity. What's rarely mentioned is how adaptable this system was, because recovered weapons show differences depending on region and enemy type, indicating battlefield analytics that border on modern military research. Pilum used against heavily armored opponents show heavier tips and different metallurgy optimized for armor penetration, while those used against tribal shield bearers emphasize bending and entanglement. That means Roman engineers were studying enemy gear, evaluating outcomes, and feeding that information back into production, a feedback loop that explains Roman tactical superiority far better than myths about inherent Roman virtue. The metallurgy itself reveals astonishing sophistication, because the iron shank was deliberately low carbon so it would bend, while the tip was hardened enough to pierce, requiring precise temperature control during forging. Achieving two different mechanical properties in one continuous piece wasn't trivial, and it required skilled artisans trained through long apprenticeships, reinforcing the idea that Roman military strategy extended far beyond the battlefield into logistics, training, and industrial organization. Even securing the lead weight required precision, because improper attachment would ruin accuracy or break shafts prematurely, proving that ancient metallurgy wasn't crude guesswork but controlled experimentation. This forces us to reconsider the entire narrative of historical military technology, because the Roman legion functioned less like a mob of fighters and more like a coordinated weapon system where every component existed to reinforce the others. The pilum volley wasn't a prelude to real combat. It was the decisive action designed to ensure that close combat happened on Roman terms. Ancient historians describe battles where enemy charges collapsed without significant Roman casualties, because once shields failed, confidence followed. Even the sound mattered, because weighted pilum produced a distinctive whistling flight, conditioning enemies to associate that noise with imminent shield destruction. Over time, this auditory cue alone could induce hesitation, demonstrating that Roman warfare science extended into sensory psychology. At Pharsalus, Caesar's decision to target cavalry faces instead of shields shows just how flexible and analytical Roman commanders were, adapting weapon use in real time based on observed reactions. And when trained cavalry fled from thrown spears, it confirmed that fear could override discipline if engineered correctly. Modern analysts studying Roman legion dominance describe the pilum as one of history's most efficient force multipliers, because it was cheap, lightweight relative to effect, and nearly impossible to counter without sacrificing other defensive priorities. Attempts to adapt by changing shield designs only created new vulnerabilities, trapping Rome's enemies in an unsolvable tactical dilemma. That dilemma wasn't accidental, it was engineered through ancient battle analysis and relentless refinement. This is why Roman military technology deserves recognition, not as primitive ingenuity, but as an early expression of scientific problem-solving applied to conflict. The Romans didn't win because they were born superior fighters, they won because they treated warfare as an engineering challenge, investing in incremental advantages that compounded over centuries. The lead weight on the pilum embodies that mindset perfectly, representing countless hours of observation, experimentation, and adaptation aimed not just at killing enemies, but at breaking their will. When you strip away romanticized imagery, what remains is a coldly rational system designed to exploit physics, materials, and psychology in tandem. And that's why Roman tactical superiority reshaped the ancient world. Every legionary carried this knowledge in physical form, and every enemy knew what was coming yet lacked the technological or conceptual framework to stop it. That isn't chaos, it's applied science, and it explains Roman conquest methods more convincingly than any story about destiny or luck. So when we talk about ancient warfare science, We aren't speculating. We're uncovering evidence of an ancient arms race driven by innovation rather than tradition. The pilum wasn't just a weapon, it was a message delivered at 30 yards that said resistance was futile before the fight even began. And if a single lead weight could do that, what other forgotten innovations are still hiding in plain sight, waiting to be decoded through military history explained with a scientific lens?